Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Jess Lenore in Baltimore. We are live on Facebook the day after Donald Trump's stunning victory.
Hundreds of high school students in California and Washington walked out of class on Wednesday to protest Donald Trump's victory. Students, along with their teachers at Berkeley High, Bishop O'Dowd High, and Oakland Technical High School, all staged morning walkouts. Donald Trump addressed supporters after his upset victory.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. We have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. It's time.
The announcement was immediately met with protests across the country and the world. Protests ranged from London, San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Portland, with more planned across the country.
Yeah, we got a message today that this country doesn't belong to us, right? We got a message today that this country belongs to the racists, that this country belongs to the establishment, that this country belongs to the motherfucking establishment and to the motherfucking money. I say it belongs to us, the people. If it belongs to us, the people, we take it to where it fucking hurts. Not the east side, we take it to where it hurts. We take it to the motherfucking freeway and then
Joined by Mike Preisner. He is an Iraq War veteran. He's an organizer, he's an activist, he's a co-founder of March Forward, an organization of veterans and active duty members of the U.S. military fighting to end the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. He's also the producer of Empire Files with Abby Martin. We're hoped to be joined with Ramon Mahia in just a few minutes. He's running late for the interview, but we'll add him on when we can. Mike, so the response to this stunning victory of Donald Trump has been, high school students have been marching across the country, walking out of school today. There was protests last night. And I'm going to qualify what I said about Trump's victory. I'm not completely surprised, but my reaction was more of a physical, sort of like my body is in shock. What he represents is a more, a more frontal attack on civil liberties, on human rights. He's more overtly racist than his opponent, Hillary Clinton. I wanted to get your thoughts, your initial reactions. Were you surprised? And what were your initial thoughts when those results were coming in last night? The polls had Clinton winning, had her with a 90% chance of winning with some polls.
Right. I was always, I was surprised in a lot of ways, like everybody. I think I wasn't really bought into what all of the so-called political experts in the mainstream media were telling us about an inevitable sweeping victory for Hillary Clinton. I think like Huffington Post, for example, their pollsters said that she had a 98.1% chance of winning on the day of the election. I think there's a massive disconnect between these like ivory tower political pundits that have no real connection to the way the vast majority of Americans have to live and what their life is like, making these predictions and being the so-called experts on these things. They've been proven wrong throughout the entire primaries and of course throughout the general election. I think your comment about how the first response we've seen is high school students walking out all over the country. I think, and tonight, right when I get done with this, I'm going to a protest in New York City. There's protests in at least 5, but probably many more cities happening spontaneously across the entire country. This is precisely why the establishment did not want Trump to be president. I think it's important to look back to our previous discussions where the entire political and military establishment lined up behind Hillary Clinton, from the top Fortune 500 CEOs to the Pentagon. Most of the Republicans in the establishment also went to Hillary Clinton because they knew, the main reason is because they knew that Trump would be a magnet for protest and resistance. And that's what they wanted to get away from after the administration of George W. Bush with President Obama. And I think that's an era that is going to be returning very quickly.
And so I think one of the interesting things that was happening last night was that a lot of pundits were saying, Trump's victory shows us that it's the low-income white people that are rebelling against the system. But exit polls, as much as you can believe them, show that actually it was wealthy white voters that handed Trump this victory. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be looked at in the exit polls. I think that one of the most striking things to me in the exit polls is, people were asked what their top issue was. And for voters for Trump, the top issue, according to exit polls, was his immigration policy. His immigration policy being build the wall, which is chanted at every single Trump rally or speech you see on television, and his immigration policy of his plan to stop Muslim immigration into the United States. So when you see a vast number of people, the vast majority of Trump voters in these polls saying that those policies were what drove them to him, I think that says a little more than what the mainstream media, how the mainstream media is trying to paint it as just, oh, this is working class white people who were voting against the establishment. While many working class white people did vote against the establishment with this vote, I think there's something very bigger at play, which is, what you just said.
And I want to remind our viewers, we're live on Facebook. We want to take your questions. Another topic I want to touch upon, which is another big thing out of this election, is that turnout is down by millions of votes for both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton compared to the last election. Many people were criticizing the Democrats. And the WikiLeaks cables came out revealing how the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign sort of collaborated. They worked together to undermine Sanders' campaign. Talk about that, because do you think the turnout could have been higher if the DNC played more fair, if Hillary Clinton wasn't the candidate? We know the Empire Files has done some great work documenting the links between John Podesta and Hillary's campaign, multinational corporations. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's important to remember, first of all, 9% of voters voted for Donald Trump in the primary, and 25% of eligible voters voted for Donald Trump in the general election. So this is by no means representative of the vast majority of American sentiments, the political program that's been embodied by Donald Trump. And so I think that's something encouraging for us going forward, is that this is a candidate that has come into office with very little support from the American population when you really look at it. But yeah, so I think that there are people to blame for Donald Trump becoming the president now. And it is not progressives. It is not third-party candidates like Jill Stein. It's the Democratic Party itself. There was, in this election, this election was really showing a harbinger of what to come. I mean, when the capitalist system cannot control its own elections, which are really just supposed to be a show to peacefully transfer power from one representative of the establishment to another representative of the establishment, when they cannot control that, which is what we saw in the primaries, that means that something really major is happening in society, which is more reasons that we need to be organizing. But when things started cracking for them, right? When there is a mass movement on both sides, when there is masses of people in the form of a movement supporting Trump and masses of people in the form of a movement supporting Bernie Sanders, the Republican Party was, Trump became the nominee, and then they, in a lot of ways, embraced that movement, and that's the reason he won. On the other hand, the Democratic Party, in response to that grassroots swell of support, millions of new young people who were willing to join the Democratic Party, millions of new young people who were in political motion, who were ready to take part in the elections. Not only did they do nothing to try to bring them into the fold, they flat out repudiated them. I mean, remember when Debbie Wasserman Schultz was outed for rigging the primaries as her position as DNC chair against Bernie Sanders? The Clinton campaign immediately issued a statement saying, we thank her for her great service and we're giving her a top position in our campaign. That wasn't a mistake. That was saying to Bernie supporters, like, you better get in line, and we don't care what you have to say. I mean, from that to picking Tim Kaine as the vice presidential nominee, I mean, just a conservative guy with no support in the progressive community, to the fact that, most of the Hillary Clinton campaign ads I saw were geared towards Republicans, bragging about how many Republicans had endorsed her and things like that. And so there was a very huge opportunity for the Democratic Party to speak to all of the obviously new mass sentiments among new voters who were excited about the elections, but instead they repudiated them. They said to black people, they said to Latinos, they said to young people, they said to women, it's your duty to get behind us and vote for us, and we're really not going to do any work of our own to try to get you to vote for us.
And there's a question from Facebook from Douglas Cage. He asked, what should the left be doing? And he said, not the Democrats, but the real left be doing. And I think that is the most important question right now. And there's various levels of that, because we know, along with the presidency, the Republicans also won Congress. Mitch McConnell has already announced he's going to repeal Obamacare. And for all its faults, that does mean 20 million people will be out of insurance, healthcare insurance next year. And on another level, just protecting our communities, because myself as an immigrant, as a member of the Sikh community, you know, me and my family have experienced racism our entire lives. But now, you know, with Trump taking the White House, there's a real sense, and we've seen it throughout the campaign with this, you know, rise in hate crimes against people perceived of a Middle East or Muslim origin, that it's really going to empower the right-wing fascists, and that we have to work to protect our communities.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the first and foremost task of the left right now, is be ready to fight. Be ready to fight those people, whether it's the state on behalf of Donald Trump that's cracking down on immigrants and people of color, or if it's the right-wing, neo-fascists that are now emboldened by their candidate becoming president. But it's an extremely scary time, and we need to be ready to organize and to fight, and that's happening right now all over the country, you know, tonight and in the days to come. But I want people to also be encouraged by the fact that we've been through something like this very similar, and that was with George W. Bush. And under George W. Bush, so many people were galvanized as political activists, as revolutionaries, became organizers, fought in the streets. Remember, it was under Bush that the United States saw the biggest protests ever in U.S. history, and that was from the immigrant rights movement, from the undocumented movement. And this was at a time when they were under severe attack from new anti-immigrant laws that was going to be extremely detrimental to undocumented immigrants. But even in that culture of fear and repression, and having a super right-winger as president who's trying to push through anti-immigrant policies, millions and millions of people who had a lot to be scared of came out of the shadows and fought and beat back that anti-immigrant attack. I mean, I remember, you know, in Los Angeles, the Minutemen were rallying because they were emboldened by this. They were emboldened by Bush. They were emboldened by these new anti-immigrant policies. And so the Minutemen would come into Los Angeles, hold rallies in Latino communities in Los Angeles to terrorize people, you know, while Congress was trying to push these bills through. And what we did is we went and confronted them and fought them and kicked them out of those neighborhoods to where they were scared to ever come back again. That's a period we're entering into now that I think people need to be prepared for. But I can't really overstate the fact that the Bush era, there was such a groundswell of mass movement on every issue, from LGBT equality to anti-war to immigrant rights, and it scared the hell out of the establishment. I mean, the reason that they wanted Obama so badly was because protests had reached such a peak that the system itself was actually scared of revolution in this country, and was scared of really the power of the people coalescing into a centralized, organized political force that could really challenge their power. They wanted Obama to calm everyone down and put everyone to sleep for a little while, which I think was effective. But now we're entering into an era again where all of the attacks that are going to be coming are also an opportunity to build the movements that are necessary to get any of the change that we actually need.
And I think you make an excellent point right there, because, you know, it's easy to forget that it was under President Obama that we've had more than 2.2 million deportations.
Right.
We've had more deportations under the Obama administration than the last 70 years combined. So, you know, I think what you're saying makes absolute sense right now. Again, I want to remind viewers we are taking questions on Facebook, so please send them in. And please just continue on that vein. You know, what should this organizing look like? You know, how should people be getting together? Because I think, you know, if anyone had any doubts, it's become clear now we cannot rely on the mainstream media. We can't rely on polls or pundits. They are obsolete. They're dead.
Right. Well, we know, and what we've already been seeing from this morning is there's going to be a lot of spontaneous rebellion. Anytime there's a crisis like this, a political crisis, an economic crisis, whatever, there's going to be spontaneous uprisings, spontaneous rebellions. And that is great. And that's what we need to happen. But our enemy is very organized and very centralized. So the state and Donald Trump as the head of it are going to be extremely organized in response to all the people's movements that are going to be sprouting up to defend women's rights, to defend immigrants, to defend the Muslim community. We know that they're going to be, just as we saw how they cracked down on Occupy Wall Street, how they centralized to undermine Black Lives Matter, they're going to be highly organized and highly centralized in their response to our response to Trump being in the presidency. So that means that we have to be organized and centralized as well. We can't just have spontaneous rebellions all over the place and expect that to be something that can push back against Trump. It is time now for people to join a political organization, and that's going to be key. In political organization, you're networked with people, you're training together, you're working together, you're building coalitions and relationships with other political organizations, you have a political program, you have all the things that are necessary to fight back in an organized and centralized way against an enemy that's very organized and centralized. I became a political activist in 2005. When I got out of the Army after having been to the Iraq War. And I was not an anomaly. I mean, even on my deployment and after, most of the soldiers I knew hated George W. Bush. In Iraq, everyone just hated George W. Bush. Thousands of soldiers rebelled within the military, got themselves out of the military, and took part in spirited militant resistance against the military in the streets. And those are the kind of things that are going to be possible now. I think there's going to be a mass rejection of Donald Trump and his policies through all sectors of society. And so many people today that I know as the greatest political organizers that I look up to, so many of them were born in that period, born in that Bush era, galvanized then, and stayed politically active throughout this entire time. And so I think that this is going to give birth to just a new generation of activists and organizers and revolutionaries.
And on the topic of war, if you talk to Trump supporters, one of the appeals that Trump has for them is that he at least, said he was against the war in Iraq. He said he was against the intervention in Libya. He called, Hillary a warmonger. I think one of the most poignant moments for me in the Republican debates was that when he got on stage and sort of, attacked the other candidates for supporting the Iraq war, said it was such a disaster. I think the media obviously failed to really check him on that because we know that's a lie, but they let him, spew that, continuously. But we know his vice presidential candidate, Mike Pence, has said he is going to model his vice presidency after Dick Cheney. He was a big advocate for the Iraq War. Do you think that Pence is the real danger as far as issues like foreign policy? Do you think that he is going to, despite Trump's rhetoric against intervention, that he could lead a whole new round of interventions around the? We already have military bases in 180 countries. We're already occupying the Middle East right now, but a whole new set of attacks. Trump said he wants to, dissolve the Iran nuclear deal, which could be a complete disaster in the Middle East.
Right. Here's why people in the U.S. military right now should have no reason to follow the orders that are going to be coming from Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump. First of all, this guy is a pampered billionaire. He's not the type of person that ever has to go to war. His kids will never have to go to war. Nobody in that family ever has to be the type of person that is driven into the military or joins the military for whatever reason and then loses their lives in the wars waged by the United States. That's for working class people to do, not for people of the class that Donald Trump is from. For all of his anti-war rhetoric, and yes, inside the U.S. military, opposition to the Iraq war is extremely high. And so, of course, criticizing the Iraq war, you're going to get a lot of support from people in the military who all turned against that war in large part. But what we know he did say about the Iraq war was the tragedy is that we didn't get their oil, as if that would have made all of our sacrifices worth it. All of the people who lost limbs, all of the people that died. If just Donald Trump's billionaire friends had gotten to steal the oil from Iraq, then all of that sacrifice would have been worth it. That's the mentality that he is going to be commanding the U.S. military with. And so any soldier that gets orders from Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump to deploy wherever, they can assume that that's his mentality, sending him on that deployment. Orders that every single person in the military has the absolute right to refuse to obey. But you're right. I think we don't know what's going to happen with his foreign policy. You know, I think when he was asking Kasich to be his vice president, Kasich came out and admitted that he was asked by Donald Trump to be his vice president. And when he asked what his role would be, they said running domestic and foreign policy. And he's like, well, what is Donald Trump going to do? And they were like, well, he's going to make America great. So already, I mean, he maybe would be passing the buck off to his vice president to make all of these decisions. He's going to be brought into the fold of the imperialist state of the U.S. empire, the biggest empire to ever rule the world. And so he's not going to be functioning just as an independent in this sphere. He's going to be surrounded by all of the generals, all of the political advisors, all of the people that have been carrying out this project for decades. You know, that's the world he's going to be in now. And I think that Donald Trump is a very weak person, and that I think that whatever his rhetoric about, you know, not getting into new wars, which he kind of said, that'll all be out the window once he's sitting in his new throne.
And I wanted to bring in Ramon Mahia into this conversation. As promised, he has joined us. Ramon, are you there?
Yeah.
Hey, Ramon. So we're going to see if that connection is going to hold up. Let me do a quick introduction. Ramon, he is a founding organizer of Vets vs. Hate, a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War, regional organizer of Veterans Challenge Islamophobia. Ramon, give us your thoughts on the shocking but maybe not surprising victory of Donald Trump, what that means for immigrant communities, for communities of color, for Muslim communities around this country that have already been facing an onslaught of Islamophobia and attacks just during this election campaign. We know that also happens during wars in this country. They're under the microscope. What are your thoughts?
This is disastrous. I mean, it's catastrophic in the sense that we have immigrant communities, Black communities, LGBTQ communities that have been, Muslim communities that have been discriminated against and have been essentially vilified the entire time during, Trump's run for the presidency. And now that he's president, all these promises that he was making along the campaign, whether they're real or they're just like every other politician that is just trying to feed the base. The people that elected him supported all these policies. So the fact that there's policies such as, that he was talking about having Muslims wear, IDs, have Muslim IDs, and the fact that they're going to be, building a wall. Like, I'm a Mexican, so it's like I have a lot of family that are immigrants, and a lot of them are undocumented as well. So I'm concerned about them. Me as a Muslim, I'm concerned about my son. I'm concerned that he's going to grow up in this society that's even more toxic, more racist, towards Muslims. He woke up in the morning. When he woke up, the first thing that he said was, "Who won the election?" He's 7 years old, and I had to talk to him, and I had to try and make sure that he was good. I went and talked to his teacher and his principal to make sure, hey, I'm entrusting you with my son. Take care of him. And it's emotional because I'm so infuriated that this is what the society that we live in. I get emotional because I'm so upset, because I still had a little bit of hope for a prosperous society, to be able to prosper in this country. And since that, I was told yesterday that I'm not welcome here, even though I was born here. I'm not welcome here because my family are immigrants. I'm not welcome here because I'm a Muslim. And then, what am I going to do? I'm going to fight back. I'm going to organize, and I'm going to, build these communities that are being marginalized and discriminated against. We have to fight against these policies and against this racist rhetoric that's been spewed throughout this entire electoral process.
And Ramon, you know, we've been having this conversation with Mike for a few minutes now, but talk about what that organizing is going to have to look like, because the first step we need to take is work to defend our communities, the vulnerable populations that are going to be under direct attack. Talk about how that needs to happen and how people should go about that.
So I live here in Mississippi, and it's, you know, I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, but I'm living here in Mississippi, and it's like there's a large immigrant population from Mexico here in Biloxi, Mississippi, and it's like we're talking to people, and we're trying to tell people that we have to create like some kind of security, in the sense of like, if you're going to be going somewhere, then trying to, you know, create like a phone system to where we're able to have a connection with each other and be able to try and make sure that we take care of one another. And not only the Mexican community, but also like the African American community and other immigrant communities. And the Muslim community is really small here in Mississippi, but we have to band together in the sense of making sure that that any, you know, kind of like discrimination that's happening, that we need to defend ourselves against it. If you know, this morning when I was pumping gas, there was a African American pumping gas next to me, and he told me, "You good?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And he's like, "Man, we're gonna have to watch out for each other, black and brown, because they're coming." People know that we have to work together, and we have to build not only within our own community, but within multiple communities, to try and create some kind of local power. You know, how that actually looks like, I don't know, because I've never really done that. You know, I've combated Islamophobia, and I've countered, you know, neo-Nazis and fascists in Texas, you know, that have like armed protests of the mosques. But I've never done to this point to where now I know that I feel like everywhere I look around that I could be attacked, you know, or that, you know, it's like I'm still like stumped, and I'm trying to figure out what way can we move forward. I just know that we have to move forward.
And Mike, we had a question from Facebook for you, and you can feel free to weigh in on what Ramon was saying as well. But a question for you: will the next war be with Iran?
I don't think I can make a prediction about that. We know that Donald Trump, one of his campaign points was the terrible deal with Iran. So we know that his promises and his base very much want him to confront Iran. But I think that he has a potential to confront any country in the world that does anything that the United States or him does not want him to do. I think that, you know, in our discussions previously during the general election, we knew that whether Hillary or Trump won, we would have to prepare for an escalation of war in the Middle East and beyond. Both candidates promised to do just that, and we shouldn't expect either of those people, having had they won, carry out those promises. And so I think we need to be ready. I mean, it's Ramon, I mean, you know, you're right. I mean, we all need to be together in this. We all need to be sticking together. We all need to be in communication, organized, highly organized, prepared to fight back against whatever attacks are going to come. I know it's an extremely demoralizing period and fearful period. But, you know, I remember being on the steps of the Capitol building under Bush with 300 Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, all in uniform, with almost 200,000 people pouring over the barricades at Congress. I remember being in Los Angeles with hundreds of thousands of undocumented workers under Bush, fighting the police, pushing back against the policies that were coming down. I remember being in the Occupy movement, you know, facing off against police there in cities all across the country. I mean, I remember so many moments, it's just in the past decade, where this system, the powers that be, the establishment, and all of their little cronies and racists and little mobsters running around, they were terrified. I mean, I have seen the mass movement of people strike fear into those centers of power, not just in the government, but also their militiamen and all those people on the ground that like to act tough and wear crazy military garb. So I know that we have the ability to organize and push back and fight back against this, but also win, and in numbers that will far dwarf their numbers. And so I think that as scary as things are right now, people have to realize that we do have the power to defeat this and turn this into something that could win victories for our movements and for our people.
And Ramon, we're almost out of time, but we want to give you the final word here. We know you had another obligation, so you had to join us late. But I guess one of the questions that I'm grappling with is that for those in America that still fail to acknowledge how real racism and white supremacy is in this country. If you have any ideas, how do we build understanding? How do we build solidarity with those communities? Is it possible to do that? Is it possible to build a bridge there?
It depends. Like, I've confronted like neo-Nazis and militiamen, as Mike was saying, like in front of mosques, and they're not. I mean, it's like there's no talking to them, right? They're set in their ways and in their ideology, in the sense of like talking to them is not going to work. They have to do their own self-reflection on the way of thinking and their outlook on life in order to try and change something. What I'm looking at is people that think that the stuff that Trump was saying is not racist. The people that are concerned, or that are concerned about their own livelihood as far as their work, whether the economy has been failing them and the government has failed them, right? So we have to try and reach those people that voted for Trump simply because they were voting against the establishment. And they said, oh, well, all those things that they're saying aren't real. No, well, the people that were pushing those agendas do believe in those agendas. We have to reach out those that are on the fringes, that are still, open-minded and still able to build that solidarity and trying to, but to create the one-on-one kind of communication. But I went into when I went and protested at Trump rally in Dallas, and before getting thrown out, I was able to chance to talk to a lot of people. And I remember this one gentleman. He was like, "Oh, I'm voting for Trump because I don't believe in the way the government, the politics, and the way the elections are and all that. So I'm just gonna go vote for Trump." But I'm in construction. He was telling me, I'm in construction. A lot of my coworkers are Mexican. A lot of them are undocumented. He can, I'm voting for Trump, but all that stuff about going against undocumented and going against my friends, those are my friends. But he still was going to vote for Trump, and I couldn't understand that. It seemed like some people were open and were understanding, but at the same time, they were still trying to vote for Trump. And that's something that that needs to be addressed. How did that happen? How does this happen?
Well, there's certainly questions that we're going to be continuing to grapple with over the next 4 years. I want to thank you both for joining us. Both of you, Mike Preisner, Ramon Mahia, war veterans, activists, organizers in your community. Mike is also the producer of Empire Files with Abby Martin. Ramon is a founding organizer of Vets vs. Hate. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you for our viewers on Facebook for those questions. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.